think people work for years and have no idea what he looks like.
All right, everybody, this is the Kubernetes production readiness sub-project meeting for whatever day it is today, July 26th. All right, we just have two agenda items. Retrospective, unless somebody added some in the last 10 minutes. And the survey. So we did a survey again this year. Maybe we won't do another one next year because it's kind of a lot of work, and I think we've gotten what we need to out of it, but we can talk about that later. Let me display. Oh, I should show the window, sorry, because then I can open other tabs. All right. Okay. So retrospective. How did it go? Any thoughts?
Yes, I need to apologize because I dropped the ball. I just got slammed at work and didn't have time. And John, you did an amazing job, like swooping in there at last minute. It was amazing. So
yeah, well, I mean, it's always better if we're not last minute because then it gives time to be more thorough. But at least we got through them, and I think there were a few things that needed to be caught, so it was good. But I mean, you did, you know, everybody. This is why we need a bigger team, right? Is that, you know, David had something he couldn't control come up. You got slammed. Like we need a bigger team to absorb those sort of things. And Mo, thank you. Your reviews were really good. I want to give you that feedback. They were thorough, and as a first-time PRR reviewer, like you were assertive enough. A lot of the people, when they've started out doing it, they're a little worried to push back at people, but at least the ones of yours that I saw, I was very pleased that you were not shy about telling people they need to do things differently. So appreciated that. Yeah, I mean, my main retrospective thing is we just don't have enough people doing it. So when somebody's not available, it gets really crammed at the end. The actual quality of them, for the most part, was decent. I mean, there are some things, there's some heaviness to feature dates. So there were a few things where, you know, I don't know, it's often a little bit of a chore to explain to people why, you know, but this is such a simple feature, and it's you know, it falls back to the old way of doing it if it doesn't work. It's like, well, yeah, but it's not about the thing is if it works. It's about, like, if your code executes and there's a bug in it, we don't know what's going to happen. And so I had a few, I mean, people accepted it and they did it, but you know, it's a little awkward sometimes. But
John, is it related to some special SIGs or something? Because, like, to be honest, I didn't even have a single example of that. I think this release for sure, but I think also in the previous release. So
really, of people being yes, like, oh, it's too much hassle.
No, I think like every single PR that I had, and I had like almost 30 this cycle, like they had feature gates. Every single one of those had a feature gate from the very beginning.
I think both of the examples I'm thinking of were, I think they were Node, and they're like things like kubelet flags. So they're things that administrators do. They're not things that users do, and they're local to kubelet. But so like the one I'm thinking of right now we ended up not using a feature gate because we ended up, I let them do like an environment variable because it's really what the point of the flag on a kubelet command line thing is that I want the user that's using that flag to know that they're using something that's not stable. And I don't believe people read the man pages. And I don't believe people read the documentation, especially when they copy and paste it from somewhere off the web. And so I don't want people to be using something that a flag that's alpha, a command line flag that's alpha, and it to disappear because we decided it's a bad idea. And all of a sudden they try to upgrade and everything breaks. So their scripts all break. So it's really about, I made them put an environment variable in that says like, we do this for kube control too, right? Because there's no server side component at all, like in a CLI kube control command. So there's an environment variable that if they try to use the flag without setting that environment variable, it basically says, I don't know what you're talking about. So we did the same thing with this particular thing, which is a little weird because I don't think we do it anywhere else with kubelet, but it's like it's like reading from the local config dir instead of, so anyway, it worked out fine. Then the other one where I had that, it was a small change in the way that right now you need to configure something in two places. You need to configure kubelet and you need to tell CRI or CRI needs to support it and they need to like match. And so now they wanted to discover it from CRI and just set it. And if they can't discover it, then they use the old process. But I was still concerned that like, if you don't gate that with anything, if there's a problem with it, an unexpected, in some weird, like how many millions of nodes are out there? And are we really going to test every possible combination? Exactly. Thank you, David. If there's a panic, everything's, you screwed, right? So like, I'm like, I don't want, so I made them put a gate in even though they bitched and moaned about it. It's like, I'm like, do you want to be the one that it turns out broke 500,000 clusters, right? Is this effort worth it? And they're like, yeah, fine, okay. Right? So, but like I'm getting the pushback, and the pushback comes from these very small changes. But obviously, if it were so small, then the node leads wouldn't have said we need a cap for it, right? If it's big enough to need a cap, there's some risk involved. That's kind of and we needed a debate about it. Like, so to me, that's the dividing line. Like if it's so minor that it doesn't need a cap, then I could be like, yeah, I can see why you might do that. So anyway, those are the two kind of areas where I had to be a little more forceful on things. But other than that, things went pretty smoothly with folks.
I'm glad to hear it. I wish I had more feedback, but I missed the last 2 weeks. So 3 weeks.
Yeah.
Yeah, so from my perspective, yeah, I also want to second what John already said about Mo. Like I also did like I think 2 or 3 PRR approvals after what Mo did the first pass, and those were great. I had a similar feeling from for like reviews from Jeremy, but he is not here today, I think. Yeah. Regarding like my thoughts about the quality of PRRs, I think it's I agree, it's improving like release to release. I think the biggest things that I had in mine were like version skew and like upgrade, like how to upgrade stuff, or how to ensure it doesn't work, because things like sidecars and stuff like that are just tricky. And like I don't blame those people. Like it took us time to figure out stuff. And still metrics, I think, or like visibility into the features is still probably the biggest thing, where people like either try to avoid thinking about it, or they come up with like the very first metric that like makes very little sense, but like there is some metric and they try to push for that. So pushing to come up with something that is potentially harder to implement or harder to come up with, but makes more sense is probably like the biggest theme that I had this cycle.
Yeah.
But yeah, in general, I agree that it's like getting better every single release.
Yeah, I think there were a few also with metrics. And I don't remember, do we require metrics in beta?
Yes, we do. Because in beta, you're on by default. So you need to have a standard way to know whether it's functional across the fleet.
Yeah, of course. Okay. Yeah, I'm just trying to remember the ones I reviewed. Yeah. I mean, depending how people use alpha feature, yeah, whatever. We can't require it in alpha, but it would be nice. They certainly are nice to have in alpha too, right? Like, so you can try and figure out why your cluster's struggling if it is. But
yeah, I try to challenge people to think of them in alpha, but I often, obviously I can't require it. It's not on the list, but
yeah. But something Han, I think, added it. Each component now publishes the state of its feature gates as a metric.
Yes.
So at least the enablement or disablement you can tell on a component by component basis for the features from a metric.
yeah, I haven't had the willingness to look and see how far skewed they are on my clusters yet.
Probably alert off of it.
Yeah. Does everyone remember that it is n-3 skew for node? That changed this release. And I bet it's written down in the template now somewhere, but that was
Jordan just
change.
sent the PR to change that in the template.
Yeah, but it's a notable change because it has an impact on storage and CNI stuff as well.
I have a question for you guys. So LTS is becoming a thing, right? Theoretically. So theoretically, so by extension, so is skip level upgrades potentially. So do we have to rethink the feature cycle? Because when we skip over many versions, we're just gonna skip over beta phases.
It would be possible to skip over beta phases. I don't know whether I would declare that I would expect so many people to do that it would change the life cycle.
I think I guess like we are going towards supporting skipping individual versions, but we still not support it, at least officially. So I expect this discussion to be part of the discussion or the cap where we will actually propose the skip upgrades.
Well, I think it's going to take a lot to get skip upgrades. I don't think it's going to be one cap. I think it's going to be
a series of caps.
Yes. Yeah, a series of caps. Yeah, exactly.
I don't know that it'll be that hard.
Don't we do skips for nodes, just not for control plane? I thought we did. I thought we could do skips for nodes.
You think about it, if you take the time to build a feature gate assignment map that says these are the feature gates that are enabled in my n-1, and I must have the exact same matching set of disabled in my n-2. I have to have the exact same feature set disabled until I say I'm not going to revert back to n-2. Then you start up, you're compatible, you make sure that it mostly works, and then at that point, when you say I'm no longer going to take my option to go back to n-2, flip on the new features.
Yeah,
like
but the
that.
thing is,
Yeah.
don't we delete feature gates after they're GA? So
Yeah, I mean, they would have to exist and be settable for
that's
this.
what I'm saying. Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
But that's
Like
a
we
minor.
actually,
Yeah.
yeah, but that's what I'm saying. Like we actually do have to do something about the feature gates, right? Like the protocol has to change, our policy has to change. Just something to think about.
Mo has been very patient with his hand. I'm impressed.
Yeah, all I was gonna say, so like when I talked to like I think Jordan about it at KubeCon, the gist I got was sort of around, I think what you guys have been talking about is basically that wherever today where we would do something that was using a like a 127 to 128 as like a boundary to cause some change or something, it would then need to take into account that the skip might, if we support like 3 versions of skip, right, that it wouldn't be like 127 to 128, it would need to be like 127 to 130 that it supports. And
Right.
so there would be no particular version that's LTS. It's just that any particular version can support up to like 3 versions of, or whatever versions of jumping within some constraints, like I don't know, like you only use GA features or whatever. Like I think you do have to constrain it down, right? Like if you say that like you can have beta features or alpha, I mean definitely not alpha features, but if you can have like beta features, I think it gets kind of messy. But I guess we could make it work for like beta APIs too if you just kept the beta REST APIs around for like long enough.
I think we should put the APIs behind feature flags instead of runtime config because it's confusing to use both.
I think that's independent of what we choose to do here. And I am unwilling to get rid of runtime config, but I would be willing to say that perhaps the default honors feature gates. Right? Like I think independent of a feature gate, I need to be able to disable an API if I don't want it, because even GA APIs, maybe some of them I don't want. Take, for instance, is it components? That terrible one in core.
Component status, yeah.
That just doesn't work. I want to have the option of getting rid of stuff like that. But as an API feature, API machinery feature, it'd be a good one.
Okay, well that's really more for the work.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah, I was just getting derailed because, like, yeah, I mean, it's kind of related tangentially.
Yeah, all these things come together. There's also like the feature cycle, like, do we want alpha, beta, GA, or do we want just preview and GA? Like those are all discussions. Like right now, people complain about the length of the feature cycle, right? It's very, very long. But I think that, okay, anything else on the retro, or should we jump into the survey? All right. So the only thing I have to be careful of here is not to show the people's emails, because there's a section that has emails.
Yeah.
So 70 responses, which is okay, but not great. Last year, I think we had 100 and we almost double that, I think. I usually get a lot when I get Tim to tweet it out. I don't know if he did this. I asked him to. I don't remember if he did. I think he did, because he's got a lot of Twitter people. Okay, David. Yeah, I mean, I think we can kind of quickly go over some of these summary things, and we can probably drop it at 12:30. So I don't have comparisons to last year. So we do need a volunteer to analyze this data. I did it, I think, twice, and David did it once, or vice versa.
Yeah,
So
I definitely did it twice.
You did it twice? Okay, thank you, David. And yeah, it's it's kind of fun, but it's also a little tedious. And then we want to have the discussion of whether we think we need to continue doing the survey, or if we feel like we believe it's valuable and we don't need to continue proving it. But quickly to go over. Uh, so different types of users. I think that's probably about the same split as last time, but I didn't check, like I said. So size-wise, most of the people, small number of clusters, but then, you know, a few people. This is probably Google and Red Hat. Sometimes that's what comes out there. But anyway, number of clusters, number of nodes under management. We did get a fair number of people with, you know, a lot of nodes. So that's, they're not all small clusters. Okay. The more interesting questions. Why is it not scrolling for me? 75% say it's more reliable today than 1 year ago. So I think that's pretty good. I know somebody, one of these, it says they said no because it's just as ready as it was before. They've never had any problems. So I don't think that really counts as a no. That's more of a not sure. So I think that's going pretty well. Other basic summaries. You know, there's a pretty big spread of versions, even though some of these are pretty darn old. I think without looking at the comparisons in previous years, it's a little hard to make meaning out of this. Rolling back, I think specific failures is what we had. Anyway, like I said, without going back and comparing it and doing the analysis we usually do, it's a little hard to make meaning. Any thoughts on here, or any volunteers to do the analysis? We basically have a bunch of SQL commands, and you create a database in the name's eluding me. What is it, David? It's the Google tool.
It's the Data Studio tool.
Yeah,
Maybe
data-
change to something Looker. I don't even.
Yeah, it's BigQuery behind that.
Yeah.
And then the Data Studio tool is what we use to create the charts and stuff. And all of those are here. Like if you look at what the old ones look like. So
Yeah, I guess it's my turn. I can reach out to you offline, John, and can get some pointers or whatever.
okay.
The agenda, I think I shared a doc for a link for how we do this somewhere.
Yeah, David put together some
Okay, I recall
no,
them.
I sent him my really crappy notes and queries 2 years, 3 years ago, and then he
Yeah, it is slightly refined, but not by much. But the end result is nice though, to be able to show left and right and see the improvement.
Yeah, and one of the things we did in the most recent one is we, instead of doing it by absolute version number, we did it by like n and n-1 and n-2. So it's a little bit like you can kind of see if people are upgrading faster or slower kind of thing. But anyway, okay, awesome, Wojciech. Yeah, that sounds good then. I know you guys have to drop.
Just that note that it might take a bit of time because I will be on vacation soon for like 2 weeks. So probably like more like month and a half or ish or something like that.
That's
from
understood.
now.
It took me and David each a long time. Like it's one of those tasks that you work on a little bit as you find the time. And so yeah, just what we do is we'll go through, do that analysis. We'll meet and talk about it in here, and then we'll present a summary to the rest of the SIG architecture to kind of, and then we should decide, like, do we get enough value from the survey that we want to keep doing it every year, or do we feel like the original reason for the survey was to make sure that doing production readiness reviews at all was valuable. And, you know, I think we've caught enough stuff at this point going through that I think it's valuable to raise the bar. So All right, that's all I've got today. Anybody else want to say anything before we drop?
I threw one other topic on there, and we can discuss it next time, perhaps. I remember Mo had a question of did filling out your own PRR count? I did go off and I thought about it for a while, and I think that just the role of PRR is less can you yourself do it, and more can you explain to the person who is trying to fill this out why it's important for them to do it, and not yield. And I think it's a different skill set, and that's where my head's at. But I want to throw it up here for discussion because I think that was probably the biggest outstanding comment.
I think the biggest difference that I see is that when I'm writing a CAP or I'm filling my own PRR, I'm really familiar with everything below and like everything that needs to happen. And and for PRR, like it's not necessarily the case. I mean, you understand the high level stuff. You may dig into details, but you probably don't know all of them from the top of your head. So I think I agree with the conclusion, but for slightly different reason.
That both of those make sense to me, and I think that that filling out your own can help demonstrate that some of the knowledge, but it's not just the knowledge; it's that willingness to call people out is part of it. It's also the willingness to, or the ability to take that. Really, you're just looking at the cap usually. Like I don't often dig into the code because there's, I mean, it's for these, I'll read the design and that, but it's a different skill set to kind of evaluate that and then find the holes in what's needed rather than go through and answer the questions. I think it is a slightly different skill set. So I would agree that while I think it's potentially helpful to include in the packet of, am I ready to be an approver? I don't think it's like definitive in that it's the equivalent. Does that answer your question, Mo?
As just an aside, I didn't actually have an opinion. It was purely just a like
Question, yeah.
Yeah, it was like, I mean, I think my internal conservatism would say it doesn't count just because it's.
There's
like,
no rush. Like let's make people do a few more, right?
It also just kind of felt a little bit like cheating. It's like, oh, so if I can just write a bunch of keps for my own SIG,
Right.
yeah.
Well, and that's an important point too, right? You got to be able to go into other SIGs and like dig around in there, and get familiar enough with what they're doing quickly enough that you can make relevant questions. So. Okay, awesome. Thank you, everybody. We'll discuss the bar for approver next time. I'll shift. Okay, thank you. Bye-bye.
Well.
Thanks.